am a link in this chain, and it won't break here. I am a link in this chain, and it won't break here. We are links in this chain, and we won't break here. Ashe.
Question going forward is, number one, how do we avoid that, right, going forward? But then also, what's our responsibility to one another, right? So we want to have a conversation around that. We got some brothers up here that have had some experience in that kind of conversations around politics, but I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we really want to have an interactive conversation around everybody's thoughts. Everybody cool? All right, so El, you want to introduce first?
Yeah, my name is El. I'm one of the original sons of the Black Man Lab when we first started this off. I do a whole bunch of other stuff now, but I'm a son first.
Greetings, brothers. My name is Jared Grant, and I'm also part of the Black Man Lab, on the board, co-founder, and political scientist, and I look forward to the conversation tonight.
Greetings, brothers. My name is Kazem Diajamo. I'm the owner of Black Dot Culture Center and Bookstore in Lithonia, Georgia, and it's an honor to be down here with you brothers today.
What's going on, brothers? I'm Takai Tinsley, community organizer since 2018 for the Metro Atlanta community. Just got off the Black Men's Tour Lab tour around the state, engaging Black men. We got a lot of folks to vote in this last election, so hopefully, like Marty said, we can figure out what to do next.
What's going on, fellas? My name is Scotty Smart. I'm also a community organizer working in the political education space. And we're just here. Really, I just want to hear from y'all tonight what you want, but also to help guide you with some direction from your wants to get you the outcomes we're looking for next time around.
Brothers, first question as it relates to the election. A generalized question of what do you think happened, right? Where do you think that the disconnect was in terms of the results of the election?
So one of the groups that I work with is BVM Capacity Building, Black Voters Matter. And we do a lot of voter education. And as we went around the country, especially the East Corridor, the number one thing that there was a disconnect was people's ideas of what policies were on both sides, right? But I frankly, honestly believe that the disconnect starts way before you even start talking about politics, because most of us in here, most of us didn't heard the word, oh, I ain't no politician. But politics is as simple as moving power. So we all politicians. We all have to have the ability to do so and should want the ability to do so. When it comes to our education from the school ground, whether it's a public school or private, right? But something like this is simple. Making sure that you show up, making sure you bring somebody with you, right? Making sure that we're intentional once we get the power, something as simple as it can be a difficult name to pronounce, but making sure Mauli, not Muali, not Maui, and it ain't no disrespect, but I'm being serious in terms of when you talk about the disconnect, it really starts with something as simple as when we meeting each other, being intentional with our greetings, like Uncle Marty was saying. Most Black men don't say what's up, especially in Atlanta. When I'm in Chicago on the South Side, it's a whole different thing. Like, you damn near better not say what's up. So the disconnect, I think it starts with a whole it starts with a whole nother conversation about fundamentals of understanding politics, like what it is, right? What should we even be looking for?
I think that was an amazing answer. It is the political education that we lack. But the biggest thing is, first off, let's make sure we control the narrative, right? Like, we're not going to accept this narrative that it was Black men's fault. We did our part, right? 70% of the voter turnout was white people. If 70% of the vote for one thing, and more than 50% of each conglomerate of white people, white men and white women, voted for Trump, right? And so what we have to do is get into understanding the dynamics. But we did a great job as our makeup. We only make up 12% of the vote. Black men make up 5% of the vote. 5% ain't gonna make the world change, okay? So we have to understand the narratives, but also push back the narratives, because right now, most of the media is going to either pick Black and brown people to say that we were the ones who didn't show up, that didn't have the outcomes they were looking for. but we have to also be able to have a conversation that challenges that pushes back on that says it was an uneducated voter turnout, right? Majority of the common denominator between people who voted for Trump and who did not was their education level. The high school and under non-postgraduate conglomerate voted 70% for Trump. So again, it goes back to the educational piece, right? And we have to not be intimidated by politics as a whole. Not enough of us are willing to ask the uncomfortable question and just say that we don't understand. It's okay not to understand, because that's the only way we can continue to teach and learn and grow is you're willing to say, I don't know what you're talking about. This doesn't make sense to me, but it relates to my life. So that was the biggest thing I took away from the tour, is getting a lot of misinformation, a lot of the headlines, a lot of the, there was no in-depth. It was so surface level. We have to be able to get in depth and have a real conversation about how we build power. And I think this is actually a perfect storm. I think it's time for us to organize. Now it's time for us to see who's going to do the work. 2020, if you ever heard that only every 4 years we vote, that's some BS. 2025 is going to be extremely important. We have a lot of municipal races. We have to get you involved at your city levels, at your state levels. And the numbers are so low that we can have a huge impact if we show up in these local races in 2025. So if you don't like the mayors where you live, if you don't like the city councilman where you live, we have 535 cities in the state of Georgia. Majority of them have mayor races and city councilman races next year, school board races next year, right? So what affects your community? We cannot continue to have a conversation about who controls the country if we cannot have a conversation about who controls our community.
Good evening, brothers. Good evening. All right, I'm just checking. It's the lab, right? So I'm Derek Jackson. I'm a state representative. I'm about to go into my 5th term. Been here before. So I agree what has been said, but as I was thinking about the question, the words of Malcolm X comes to mind. We're not outnumbered. We're just out organized. We out organized. We have always had to deal with the least. Always. Back during Reconstruction, I shared with you all, there were only 700,000. There was only 700,000 black men voting, 600,000 white men voting. That's the reason why we had Reconstruction, y'all. They didn't give it to us. But them brothers back during Reconstruction organized. And for 14 years, they organized so well that the Compromise of 1877, it was just one vote that stopped them. 185 to 184. They got out organized. And so we got to do the same thing. In fact, we have more today than they had back even in the 60s. We can send out I'm off of Twitter or X now, but we can send out a text and mobilize 10,000 of us downtown in Atlanta if we really wanted to. Do anybody know the number of black registered voters in Georgia? Anybody know? Keep going. Okay, we're getting closer. What you got? No, it's 2.7 million. 2.7 million registered voters, black voters in Georgia. They don't have papers, they just register. Do anybody know how many votes you need to become governor here in Georgia? Anybody know? No? Keep going. Keep going. Right. 2 million. 2 million. That's all you need. So we have the numbers right here in Georgia. We just got to organize it and mobilize it. right? The same kind of energy that the Black Men Lab did going across before the hurricane came. What if we did that starting January of 2025 and keep it going through November? Do it for the entire 10 months. Can you imagine? There are 58 counties in Georgia that has 95% of the black votes. Do y'all know that? This is where organization comes in. So if we hit 58 counties of the 159 counties, you get 95% of the black vote. We just got to organize it and meet brothers and sisters where they are, right? Because we have the ability to do something that they can't. We can go into Buckhead and Bankhead. They only can go into Buckhead. They're too intimidated to go into Bankhead. So we just got to organize and mobilize. And listen, I'm always elated to be with you brothers, but when I got the text from my good brother that this was the topic, I said, I got to change my schedule to get here because we don't talk about this often, right? The first topic that we were intimidated to talk about was education. The second topic we were intimidated to talk about was economics. So we now educated, we now have economics. The third topic is politics. And they make it feel so dirty. I'm not a politician. But they get into it, and then before you know it, they're multimillionaires and billionaires. So if it was so dirty to be a politician, why are they doing it? Why are they doing it? So we cannot co-opt the narrative. To my young brother, what he just said, we cannot co-opt their narrative because they only say that in our community. They don't say that in their community. Think about this for a second. You're about to have someone to occupy the office that has the absolute worst criminal record in the history of this country. Am I lying? The worst criminal record in this country is about to occupy the Oval Office. And then he has the audacity to say that I'm going to appoint the Attorney General to have a worse. But yet, when they paint the picture of who's a criminal, they paint a picture of us. They paint a picture of us. So we cannot co-opt their narrative. We got to outmaneuver them. We've done it before. We did it in the 1800s, and we could do it again. I say hold high your head, and let's get to it.
Is Dr. John Henry Clarke. One of the key things he said was, we have no friends. The only friend you have is the one in the mirror. It's something about black men and black women that when Oli always says this, is why I love this term, and the brother just said it. When we organize, the world changes. Yeah. We have no friends. We have to have a black agenda for all parties. Go ahead, clap for yourself. One of our elder political scientists, Dr. William Boone, just said to me, he said, we have to continue to build institutions. We have an institution. We have to have a succession plan for this institution. We have to continue to organize ourselves with the brotherhoods of other institutions, a brotherhood of institutions, collective institutions, with what? A black agenda. A black agenda for us, a black agenda for black men. We have the answers. And here's the other thing. Good black legislation and policy is good for everybody. It's not just good for us, it's good for everybody. We changed the world. They didn't let us out of slavery. We got ourselves out of slavery. And so we have to begin to manage ourselves, be disciplined, and begin. I'm in total agreement. We need to begin our organization of whatever. 2025, January, and for the next 4 years, local politics, we need to take over. We need to take over Georgia. This needs to be a black state. This is the state of Atlanta. It's metropolitan Atlanta. When we go to Georgia, it's something different out there, right? Maoli knows that when he travels. So, brothers, I'll say this last thing. Dr. Clark also said this. He said, faith did not save us for an idle reason. There are a lot of people who've been wiped off the planet Earth after this European went around and just decimated populations, decimated everything. Y'all tripping on Trump, but Trump is the epitome of the white boy. He gets privilege like no other. So social symbolism, they're going to vote for him. You think they're voting against their interests? They're not. That is their interest. Yeah. We are in charge. Our interest is that there's a representative that represents us being in charge. That's it. That's their politics. We are in charge. Black men, let's organize ourselves, whatever that may be. Let's get our black agenda together and get our black agenda for the black family, black agenda for the black man, and black agenda for the black community, and change the world again.
Politics is the management system of our economy. It touches everything that we do. My challenge has always been, I have a podcast called The Urban Politician. My challenge is how to make politics sexy, right? How do we break it down and articulate it in such a way where we all get it? For instance, an example, in DeKalb County, I don't know about Fulton, in DeKalb County, you want to open up a restaurant. One of the things they ask you is, how many seats are you going to have in the restaurant? Why do they want to know that? Because they want to know what your consumption is. Because that much water is going to be used, right? There's a cost to that, right? So there's great explanation for that, but here's the political question. With all the taxes that they're raising, we know Fulton County and DeKalb County has water infrastructure problems. With all the fees that they're tacking on, with all the taxes that they're collecting, with all the water bills that they're paying, how are they rebuilding that water infrastructure for the future? Because that affects each and every single household, right? Not just businesses, it's how do we break down politics where each and every single one of us on a granular level understands why it's important that we engage, right? Why is it that we have barbershop talk and not think tanks? Right? Why do we not understand dog whistles? Why do we have to say everything out loud? When I walk past a brother and I nod my head, that's a dog whistle. We understand that. In politics, we speak the same way. We want to take over these 58 counties. We ain't got to broadcast, so we just got to do the work. I've done 3 events leading up to the election in Black Men, and there's one thing that I've noticed. There's several things that I noticed around this election season, but one of them is we put our heads down and we go to work. That's what we do. But it takes more than just putting our heads down and going to work. It takes us having this, right? And having a safe space to have safe conversation. Because I've heard from the craziest things to the most intellectual things as to why they did vote, why they didn't vote, why they voted for Trump, why they voted for Kamala. We're all over the place. But we're not having real conversation where we're checking our feelings at the door, right? Where we can feel like, brother said to me after the election, well, I voted for Trump because the Democratic Party is moving too progressive. I said, well, why did you wait till after the election to ask? You see me every day. Well, I didn't feel comfortable because he thought I was going to blast him. I said, we black men. Since when do we have paper tissue feelers? Stand on your square, right? If this is the choice you made, stand on your square. I had a black Republican I invited on a panel at a Black Men's meeting. He didn't show up because he was a Republican. Well, if you're a Republican, stand on your square. Don't shrink from it, right? So we gotta get out our feelings. It's like, I don't know what this is sometimes. Maybe I'm a little old school, right? That get our feelings, check our feelings, and let's have real conversation, because we're not gonna change this dynamics until we step up. We can't no longer afford to put our heads down and do the work and then complain when our women are taking action, because that's a narrative that we're not talking about. We leave in a void, they're filling the void. So it's time for us to step up and be the leaders. Who is responsible for the conditions in our community at the end of the day? I'll just leave that conversation out there.
We talk about this, but we don't talk about this. I feel like we say there needs to be an agenda, but we ain't got no damn agenda. So as black men, what do we want? Panel, where we going? What's our 5 things? What are our policies that we gonna work on in 2025 and 2026 to get this thing going? Because we can show up at city council meetings, we can show up at legislative session, we can show up at county commission meetings, we can show up at school board meetings. But what do we want? What are the 5 things that we need that we're gonna push as policy agenda? We keep saying there needs to be a black men agenda. I ain't seen one yet. I seen Kamala's and it was like a hope. It was like a wish. It was like, that ain't even doable.
What's going in our kids' heads every day. Now, the problem,
Hold on.
because the problem ain't that black men voted for Trump or Kamala Harris. The problem is we thought that was the end. That's just the end. If we don't control the institutions that educate our kids, bro, we're gonna be recycling chaos every generation.
Yeah. Right.
And that's the real fight. That's the thing that they hold most sacred, is the control of that curriculum and that tax money to fund the schools. How do we do it? The Black Panthers gave us the blueprint. They started a national network. They fed people so they knew they would bring them in. And then they educated them. And then if you watch Dope is Deaf in New York, Baba Matula Shakur, man, they took over a hospital. Now he in there while they learning to teach acupuncture, but he in there training, politically teaching. We ain't teaching brothers down at the grassroots. That's first. We gotta educate our kids, whether we do it on Saturday, whether we do it on Sunday. The Black Man Lab is on the move. We about to develop these 2 education training tracks. And we're gonna teach brothers how to internalize and have perspective about politics and the role it plays in black liberation. Politics just play a role. It ain't the end game. Economics plays a role. We gotta be many in body and one in mind. And until we do that, they're gonna always take out a figurehead. They're gonna crush movements by saturating the community with drugs and death music. And then the next generation gonna have the same fight that the casualties of war lost the generation before. I've been around long enough, brothers. We know what to do. We just gotta do it.
So I almost asked the question of how do we take over the system, if you will, right? Because I think it's a system that's in place that's going to really be hard for us to kind of do just in a small setting. My bad.
So the way you take over the system, you have to run for office. I'm being real. The reason why I got involved in 2011, because I didn't like what was going on. And so I ran. I lost. Then I ran again. I lost again. Then I ran for the 3rd time and won. We have to run for office, right? Listen, they made it sound like this thing was so huge and intimidating. You got to raise this kind of money. You got to have this qualification. You got to know this person and that person. I just went door to door. I went door to door. Yeah, I'm educated and all that, but I went door to door. And nearly 75% of the doors I knocked on, folks said, Derek, I'm voting for you because no one ever knocked on my door. And I lived in this hood for 20, 30 years. Okay? Right? Oh, the last time? The number game. I mean, sometimes it's not. So here, let me answer the question directly. There's a universe of voters, but of that universe of voters, about 20% showed up. and I went to those 20% area and got them. 20%.
So why I asked that question is to play the numbers game, right? It's a numbers game. We talk about the system. We could talk about the system not working in our favor, but have we used the system? Right. Have we manipulated it in our favor with our numbers, right? So we talk about city council races. You mentioned that. I worked with Antonio Lewis on his last campaign. City of Atlanta, Southeast Atlanta, he had the most votes in history in his district. He only got 2,000 votes. That's it. You see what I'm saying?
So how many voters are in that district?
20,000.
Right.
It was. So we talking about 64,000 and 2,000 is the number it took to win. There's mayors in the state of Georgia with less than 1,000 votes to win.
There you go.
So it's a numbers game, right? And what we have to do is look at the numbers. Where we have large black populations, where we have people in office that don't look like us, are we turning out? Are we engaged? Because the turnout this year is always up. The off years, 2025, 2026, it's less than 10%. 20%. So how engaged are we? We talk about these meetings. How many of y'all going to a school board meeting? How many of y'all ever been to legislative session? It starts January 13th, by the way. Where you see them go to their communities and try to fight for a law, because we're trying to decrim marijuana. We're trying to keep black men out of jail. It's a lot of different, but are we showing up in these spaces? We show up in these spaces sometimes. You know, it's a nice crowd on Mondays. But how many of y'all can go to a city council meeting? We all probably in different cities. You see what I'm saying? How do you organize your community? Is how we take over the system. And it's purely by numbers.
I think that I'm kind of reminded of Chekwe Lumumba, mayor, the father of Jackson, Mississippi, that moved down from Detroit, I believe it was. And he started a grassroots campaign, just like this, grassroots. And instead of politicians coming to us, telling us what they're doing, we're grooming it from inside us to represent us, right? In the city of Lithonia, it's a little small city, 5 council people, right? It's like 2,300 population. 3 council people, because council makes all the decisions, not the mayor, right? Not the DeKalb County or CEO, right? Not the governor, right? It's the legislative body. We need 3. They come from us and they run. We back them not just with our vote, but financially, and then we ensure that we have the 3 votes. That can be done in Atlanta, right? But what we're doing is we're waiting because somebody else is getting chosen, and I don't mean chosen in a bad word. Somebody says, you know what, you need to run, and I'm going to financially back you. And they may have good intent and goodwill, but are they representing the needs of the community? Because in politician, I look for somebody who comes from community activism, not necessarily from the legal field, and I don't mean no disrespect to the legal field, but if you're not a community activist, how do you know what the community needs? Right, so we need to start really grooming our own. If this was one district or your district, he coming out of us. We know what he stands for. So I think those are the things that we really need to think about, how the strategy that we use and how we build up our communities and create these in every community, in every district, and then have these elected officials that we chose to represent us. That's how we, with the numbers. I mean, everything else was correct, but they got to come from us, not to us.
My agenda was very similar to his, but I was thinking of a quicker turnaround, and that's educating for black men, not just starting at our youth. Of course, we're going to do our youth, but like even myself, I graduated from Morehouse. I got a master's degree from Clay State University, and I'm still very miseducated, not just on politics, but on basic things like how to protect my family. Like Maoli, he was in the military. Like black men, we need to know how to protect ourselves. We need to know how to grow our own food. We need to be conscientious on how to be able to educate our men so we can educate our youth in the households. And that'll be a quicker turnaround. Now we have more educated men. Now we can centralize and organize better because men are educated. And I'm talking about as young as my age, younger, and a little bit older than me that are thirsty for this knowledge. Including myself. I've been building businesses. I'm running a nonprofit, and I feel like I don't know what I'm doing all the time. I'm always reaching out to brothers, reaching out to the OGs. Can you help me with this, help me with that? But they so caught up in there and what they got going on, and sometimes it can be difficult to formulate that connection, or sometimes they just don't know. You understand what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is, in my position where I'm at right now is I'm hungry for the knowledge. I need the education. I need to learn how to, you know what I mean? I need to learn how to protect my family. You understand what I'm saying? Especially now that we know that what's going on. I never did no time in the military, so I need to be around somebody that did. Somebody need to teach me how to be able to do that. And that's what I said.
Like since the election has passed, how will our economic system, education, GPD, and GDP, my bad, and there's different stuff in the economy will affect because of the election?
I just came back from Kenya, East Africa. And the only thing I'm going to say about the diaspora or on the continent is that everybody in the world is watching what we do here as black men. I mean, they at their TVs like this, the same way we were. But can any of us name a president of an African nation? You understand? I'm just letting you know the impact that the world is watching what we do as black people here. Number one, to answer your question, I'm going to put on the table Dr. Claude Anderson. I constantly talk about this, brother, but if we need a blueprint on how we move forward, I think Dr. Claude Anderson laid out something for us in a book called Powernomics. He gave us 5 pillars to concentrate on. Still working. On the first floor, or the first pillar, he says build businesses. Mally, you spoke about the economics. When we build businesses, then we have money circulating in our community. That takes us to the second floor, or the second pillar, which is the politics. You use the money from the businesses with our own agenda, and we go down to City Hall, and in his words, you buy the politicians. You rent them. It's just another way of saying this is what our agenda is, and you're here to enforce our agenda. We're not divided. We coming in here as a collective. That's on the second floor. On the third floor, he says, now you buy the police to protect your interests. Well, we know 90 million is going toward Cop City. That is not for us, that is against us. Right? So how do we combat that? Mike, to your question about the military, there's plenty of people in here who have served, and we can have some side conversations about Baba Rashid, who I sit at his feet, but this guy trains the top people in security around the world, right? Right here, and we got access to him, and we know what he's about. So we'll make that link. On the fourth floor, he takes us to one of the most powerful spaces, and that is the media. Because if we're not controlling our narrative and somebody else is telling our story, and if somebody else is educating our youth, like you said, this is a dead end for us. It is a dead end. And then on the fifth floor, ironically, is education. It's not on the first floor, it's on the fifth floor, because it doesn't matter how many degrees you got, if we fragment it, and we ain't all going in the same direction, that's that classism you talked about. It's classism, and it's a whole group of people who don't see no color, right? And they can live in areas, but until one of theirs get killed, now they back down here with us, right? So I'm saying, Powernomics, young man. I'm going to commit to getting a copy of that into your hands, and anybody else who wants a copy of that book, Mally will buy it for you. No, but I'm gonna buy you Amos Wilson, Black Power. Yes, sir. I'm gonna buy you Amos Wilson. It's a little thicker, but I think they both have very similar agendas. They feed off of each other. And then lastly, to the GDP, right? That's the gross domestic product, right? For how are we competing on a global scale? What do we produce? What do we manufacture as black folk other than entertainment, right? So when you talk about competing on the world scale, let alone in our communities, what are we manufacturing, black men? Right? I think that's where we, and on a bare minimum level, what we can produce is food, right? We can at least do that. And there is money set aside for gardening. That's what they say. You can garden in the back of your house, on the side of your house. And just by the terms you use, there's money allocated because you're gardening or you have a farm, right?
We solve this with programs that are for us. Nobody's coming to save us. We join programs. We center healing family time, center Afrocentric behaviors while still being capable of participating in a Eurocentric world like America. And about America, y'all voting is one tool, while we keep putting so much energy in a tool that don't help if the other side shows up. The DNC was a full display of how much disrespect they have for us, but we won't see what other parties want to offer us or what we can take from them. What if we organize towards building our own family history? What if we organize our health? What if we organize how we date? What if we organize what we're going to allow in our schools, our courthouses? People who work at Google, Apple, do not own Google or Apple. We were bought over here. This is not just some place we get to just, oh, it's ours, right? So I'm not saying walk away from America, but I am saying we better get comfortable with taking or stop fucking asking for it. Get equipped with how to use power, but get comfortable with all that you know might not even be enough, whether you're a professor, doctor, whatever else is esteemed. The poetic artist named J. Cole said, "Good news, my nigga, you came a long way. The bad news, you went the wrong way." We better live by the spook who sat by the door. We better live, Dr. John Henry Clark, we have no friends. We better understand how Europe underdeveloped Africa. They have Project 25, what do we have? And y'all please pay attention, but what if we stop believing this guy in the fucking White House is the boogeyman? Let's have some demands that start with moving beyond panels and moving into programs / committees and conferences that solve our issues and not just allow us to keep passing info along. And once we solve the issues, we can pass that along. Every race and group have a monolithic behavior towards how they move on issues, except for us. We stand our black asses proud saying we're not monolithic. Y'all gangsters are needed. Let's give them what to be gangster about. Artists are needed. Let's give them what to create about. Let's show our doctors what we need and bring it back to the hood. Their prayer said, if you claim you gangster, bang on the system. Their way is not the only way of playing. Signing up to be a part of their system is not the only way, y'all. Joining no policies, joining to be a lawyer, joining to be a doctor, psychologist, it's not the only way. It's a way. But what if we add more to it? And the reason that's why I said about the Afrocentric piece, growing up in the Eurocentric world, you'll think you got to polarize everything. It's black or gray. Y'all, shit is a mixture of everything. We hurting right now. And if we don't start, you asked about the military, bro, throw the idea that the military is the only person that can train. And there ain't no disrespect. That's a good start, but it's not the only way. Baba Rashid taught me I own my own security company now. I move security and logistics. And I work, and I have a contract in Ghana. I have an after-school program here in Chicago. So, like, I'm just saying that for y'all. It ain't one way. It ain't just about the numbers, because at the end of the day, we are the minority over here. However, we can out-organize the minority. Y'all done seen little teams come on the basketball court, soccer field, whatever, and show out. Why? Because they had a better plan than most of us. So we don't start planning, and we don't start getting monolithic about how we gonna date, how we gonna deal with black men, how we gonna walk down the street, what we gonna eat every Monday. It's not gonna work. If we keep shaming each other, oh, you Muslim, you Christian, you Catholic, you practice Ifa, you practice Buddhism, that shit gotta stop. And you got to go back in history and realize what you was given. And it might be time to come up off that, because grandma gone. She had to do that for a reason. You got another option. Man, we raised him. We can produce 1,000. Yeah, I'm the product, for real.